One fine day in the 1970s, 250,000 people in western Connecticut and Massachusetts lost a piece of their history and commerce. They lost a passenger train. Most of them didn't even notice.
All done. 120 years of service. All gone.
You sure it's the last time? Is that...
Well, we've had 4 last runs, but this is the last run. This is the definite last run.
How do you feel?
Not too happy about it.
Really?
I'm going to miss the run very much. It's,
How long have you been on it?
about 3.5 years as an engineer, and I fired up here for 12 years.
12 years.
And
Do you remember the first time you drove it as an engineer?
Yes, back in October '67, and I was nervous as heck because I've handled freight trains before, but I never handled a passenger train, you know, all by myself.
And it's different.
It's much different. You have to take in consideration you've got people instead of boxcars behind you.
So how did it go, the first run?
Did very well, on time. That's what counts,
Yeah.
on time. But I'm going to miss the runs here now. I've grown to like this line, in fact, love it, as a matter of fact.
When I was a child, I took my first train ride on a road called the Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Sault Ste. Marie. For some reason, I've never forgotten it. Even as I grew older and there were fewer trains to ride, I was always fascinated by steel rails and flanged wheels. And whenever I hear a train is making its last run, I try to be there. I guess you could call me a train buff. American passenger trains have gone out of service since 1930. As late as 1951, there were still 350 named streamliners, and you could write a song about any one. About the Paul Revere, the Puritan, and the Yankee Clipper, the Lakeshore Limited, the Phoebe Snow, and the Iron City Express, the Peach Queen, the Dixie Flagler, and the Nancy Hanks, the Midnight Special, the City of New Orleans, and the Wabash Cannonball.
Well, you better get on board. We've got just about a minute left.
Okay.
Don't want to leave you.
See that, right.
We need the money.
Okay. The train engineer Pete McLaughlin is driving today doesn't have a name but a number. It's called 136 North, and it runs 89 miles from Danbury, Connecticut to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. The route it takes has served this region for 130 years. It was first called the Housatonic Railroad after the famous river it follows most of its length. It then became the New Haven, and finally the Penn Central. But by those who rode it and worked it, it has always been known as the Berkshire Line. In its prime, when 25 trains a day once passed through Danbury, it carried thousands of people from New York and Long Island to the hotels and resorts of the Berkshire Hills. In 1965, service was cut to weekends. In '69, they took off the parlor cars and diners. And all that's left now is a single, self-propelled diesel car.
If you got to work on a weekend, this is the run to work. I mean, it's not working, really. It's a picnic, an outing. It's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people. And like I said, if you got to work on a Sunday and a weekend, this is the run to do it.
You think they'll ever bring the line back?
Maybe not for quite a while. It may in some future years, but I don't really think so. I think this is the last run.
You know, it's a funny thing. We worry in the '70s about conservation, and yet so often we ignore the obvious. The The friction of steel on steel, for example, is 1/3 that of rubber on asphalt or concrete. We worry about pollution and the rising price of oil, yet we forget that a railroad can move 4 times the amount of freight per gallon of fuel as the truck, and 5 to 10 times as many passengers per gallon as the automobile. We worry about using up our land. A single-track rail line occupies 3 1/2 acres per mile. A superhighway requires 40 acres per mile. That's why I hate to see railroads go. They remind me of a time and place where the contours of our land had not yet been so scarred and flattened, where the straw in our national life, in a manner of speaking, had not yet been turned entirely to brick.
Come and sing a simple song of freedom. Sing it like you've never sung before. Let it fill the air. Tell the people everywhere. We the people here don't want war. Hey there, Mr. Black Man, can you hear me? I don't want your diamonds or your game. I just want to be someone known to you as me, and I will bet my life you want the same. Come and sing a simple song of freedom. Sing it like you've never sung before. Let it fill the air. Tell the people everywhere. We the people here don't want war.
We crossed the river at New Milford, Connecticut, 14 miles up the valley from Danbury. Figuring a conservative 15 cents a mile, the drive costs you $2 and takes 25 minutes. The train costs 80 cents and also takes 25 minutes. 6,000 cars a day make the trip. There are no daily trains. Innkeeper Harry Dwyer remembers when it was different.
In the morning, another one would come up about 9:35, something like that. And then one would come up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, another one would go back at 5. Then one would come up at 8, another one would go back again that same night, you know. 2 up and 2 down. From here to Pittsfield, back and forth. Not only I profited, everybody else in the whole town profited by it. Good Lord alive. You should see that platform extended, that canopy extended from there down to Dolly's store. Now it's cut off. That used to be loaded with passengers there. I can remember when that train would pull in, from 50 or 60 people would get off that train and go to Lake Warmog, Candlewood Lake, all around here, you know, the whole weekend.
Automobiles, did you?
Now everybody's got an automobile, so that's the answer. When they drive their own car, then it isn't like it used to be.
He came down one Friday night to talk to us on the blood car. He wasn't going to get on it, but he had a few too many. And he's leaning against the door here. And got the highball to go, and all right, back up, he come back. We move about 2 feet, and he rolled back again. You know, waving goodbye. We had to stop,
Goodbye now,
pull him off,
see you later.
back again it.
We gotta save the bud.
And yes, gotta save the bud car, he says. Save the bud car. And the conductor's yelling out the back, run over the son of a, run over the son.
A train buff is a stubborn, single-minded creature. He knows when the last train went to Chattanooga. He knows when the last train went to Amarillo. In this case, he knows that the first train came to New Milford in 1840, to the accompaniment of cannon shot, flags, bands, and speeches. And he does not want the last one to depart without ceremony. Part child, part statistician, he keeps a 1951 National Railway Guide in his bathroom. His home sports a semaphore. His hi-fi belches steam. If you question him closely, he is apt to become excited. If more politicians played with electric trains, he will say, maybe we wouldn't be choking in all of our cities. In a sense, he's crazy. What does this mean? That you might be out of a job?
Hello. I don't know.
in the morning, you hear the work bell ring, and I march you to the table. You see the same old thing. Ain't no food upon the table. There's no fork up in the pan. But you better not complain, boy. You get in trouble with the man. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a ever-loving light on me. Yonder come Miss Rosie. How in the world did you know? By the way she wears her apron and the clothes she wore. Umbrella on her shoulder, piece of paper in her hand. She come to see the governor. She wants to free her man. Let the midnight special shine a light on me. Let the midnight special shine a light on me.
When the tracks reached Gaylordsville in 1842, there was a brand new hotel. For 75 years, it served as a combination ticket office, waiting room, post office, restaurant, tavern, and social center. On the top floor, there was a ballroom with music and dancing. Now it has become an antique. By definition, of course, the railroad is itself an antique. Its timetables, equipment, and stations pass constantly from daily life into museums. But you can imagine the bustle, the laughter, and the everydayness of it all. Catching a train then was as common as it is for us today to go to the airport to meet a friend. A small group of people in Gaylordsville are going to restore their hotel. They want to keep it as a reminder of the way things used to be done, of a time when getting somewhere was a social event. And the train station was where you said hello and where you said goodbye.
When the princes and the peasants each look back at you the same. When a friend that you had known before can't quite recall your name. And when each morning there's a cloudy sky to keep the sun from showing, then you know you are your own. Sometimes that's all that keeps you going. La 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 la, la 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 la. Beneath the chimneys and the rooftops of a village safe and sound, no one sees the face nor hears the feet that walk the moaning ground. And the stillness of the alleys and the highways keeps you growing. So you say you are your own, and that alone will keep you going.
Cornwall Bridge, Connecticut, which the train is now approaching, is 100 miles from New York City. In the 50s, a person could board one of 3 trains a day here and be in Grand Central in 2½ hours. Today, the train takes 3. The bus, 2 3/4. If a person drives, as most do, he or she will be lucky to reach Manhattan in 2½ hours, which is exactly what they could do 20 years ago, without worrying about traffic or parking. The little station here was built in 1885. There was once a hotel, a full-time station master, and a creamery. Today, it will be used for the last time, and the children have come to say goodbye. Why do you think children like trains?
Well, I suppose it's, trying to remember back to my days, the track is quiet. Fascination of the whistle is just rushed by, then all of a sudden there's this thing going by. Oh, yes, yeah.
So did I.
Wave to the man on the caboose or the engine, you know, and all that.
I am but yesterday, and you, my child, tomorrow. There's nothing I can give you.
Connecticut's Department of Transportation wants to build a highway up the lower part of this valley, which will cost, at last estimate, over $5 million a mile. For that amount of money, for 1 mile of highway, the citizens of Connecticut, if they chose, could also rebuild 40 miles of railroad track and keep weekend trains on the Berkshire Line for 30 years. Do you know that the city of Atlanta once estimated that her principal freeway would eventually have to be expanded to 36 lanes? Can you imagine a 36-lane freeway? Well, in Atlanta, they found that if such a road were ever built, it would carry almost as many people as 2 tracks of rail. As they say in Great Britain, the superhighways of tomorrow were actually built 100 years ago.
If I have any future, it is within your eyes each time you smile. My child, my child. The hand of life will rock you. I brought you forth, and then my task was through. I give to you this wondrous view. I am but yesterday, and you, my child, tomorrow. And you, my child, your tomorrow.
On wire, like a drum in a midnight choir. I have tried in my way to be free. Like a man on the hook, like a knife from an old-fashioned book. I have a say every freedom I have saved every freedom for me. And if I ever been unkind, I hope that you can just let it go on by. And if I ever been untrue, I hope you know never, never do. Say every freedom have saved every freedom for me. Leaning on his wooden crutch, he said, I'm heard you say, you must not ask too much.
Perhaps I am a dreamer. I'm not against highways or cars, but I am against having to use them so much of the time. Private automobiles consume 1/5 of all the energy we use. 30 million of us drive to work alone each day. We tax ourselves 10 times as much for highways as we do for mass transit. We use only 15% of our rail network to move ourselves about. You know, at this rate, we shall burn more oil in the next 10 years than we have in the past 100. Or, looking at it another way, by 1985, if we don't change our ways, all of the oil in Alaska right now will last this nation a grand total of 4 years. What then? Well, at least part of the answer is right here. Restore railroads to what they were in 1951, as Lewis Mumford urges, and half our continuing oil deficit could disappear in 10 years. Rebuild 200,000 miles of track, especially in and around our cities where 3 out of every 4 of us live, and bring back 500,000 jobs lost in the 1950s. Stop buying trains from abroad and start building them here at home. As I said, perhaps I am a dreamer.
Built 1872, so 100 years old next couple of years, right.
In the town of Canaan, I talked with former station agent Stanley Hustowski about trains during World War II and about the old days before that. Stanley was a railroad man for 46 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Can I look around?
You most certainly can.
This cross track here.
Well, that's a crossover.
Crossover?
Crossover. In railroad language, they call it a diamond.
Did you ever work in the tracks themselves?
Yeah, I started on that. I started as a rail inspector. It's quite a complicated thing. We're putting in new rail between South Lee, Mass. And Pittsfield. And after this rail was laid, well, I did start right off, but after this rail was laid, I used to have a mirror with 2 little wheels on there, and the mirror would face, so it would show up like that, underneath, see?
So you can see the bottom.
Yeah, and the ball of the rail underneath here, where you can't see.
How far could you go?
Well, I'd walk along just like that. I'd walk a mile one way, and I turn around and come back the other side.
Do you remember when there were trains that long enough to go this whole platform?
Yes, I do.
How do you feel now that it's all gone? The railroad's gone?
Well, I hate to see it go. I don't like to see railroads go. I think they're the most fascinating industry in the world, the railroads are. You find everything on a railroad. Find carpenters, cooks, thieves, anything you want on a railroad, works on a railroad. And there are electronics. All the yards are electronics now.
Well, I suppose people want to move faster now.
Yes, well, can't hold down progress. You got to keep building up with everybody.
How many trains a day did you have, and how did you lose them?
Well, we had 2 trains for New York a day, 2 trains back from New York every day.
How many people would you have here in 1950, say?
Well,
on a Sunday night.
1950, things were kind of slacking down. But starting during the World War, I see people here loaded right in the whole station was loaded with people. We used to do a landslide ticket business in this office here one time.
And now you just have this one car.
Then we finally, the war was over. Everybody got plenty of gas. Trains were being cut off because they weren't carrying nobody. And we lost the mail. We lost the express. Then we took off the big trains. We put on butt cars. I was in here, and we come up with 17 coaches. That's the diner, including the diner, and so forth and so on a Sunday morning. I hate to see railroads go. About 4 years after the New York Ontario Western was taken down, when I went there, the roundhouse was a busy thing. Had about 14 engines working day and night there, freight trains and everything else. I went there 4 years afterwards, not even a stray dog in the yard. And half the buildings were torn down. And no railroad. And it took years to build.
All my friends are travelers. We don't often get to meet, but I know they're out there somewhere, and the knowing keeps me sweet. Now some go out in limousines, and some leave on their feet, and I never really feel as if they're gone. No, I never really feel as if they're gone.
Well, I seen that engine coming was 5 years ago. She was rolling big and black, you should have heard that whistle blow. Train slowed down around the bend, well, I believe I'll take a ride. A train man, get me satisfied. Here come the train of glory. It's coming right on time. Won't you do me a favor? Pick up my friends along the line. Well, I'm laying at the other end. I got my suitcase under my head. I'll take my friends a message and tell them what I said. I'll tell them I need some money so I can buy a drink or two, and ask them nice if they'll come back with you. Well, here come the train of glory. It's coming right on time. Won't you do me a favor? Pick up my friends along the line.
Can we handle 300 million people and 200 million cars in 19?
I have seen the future.
and it doesn't work.
Whether you like it or not, you folks right in this area are getting to be very close to the metropolitan New York area.
I'm concerned that
I'd like to keep this valley just the way it is.
Listen, people are going to come here. You can't stop them.
Why don't they stay where they are?
This is America. People go where they are.
Megalopolis, 20 million people from Washington to New York.
How else would they get here?
Why not by train?
By train? Trains are a thing of the past.
So is the cheap gasoline.
no reason in the world why we cannot again have good trains. No reason in the
5
world.
years ago, when I tried to talk with highway people about the problems of the railroad, they couldn't care less.
I can't think of any single thing which has hit the United States of America with a more adverse effect from an ecological point of view than the automobile.
But somehow, there's been a complete change about it. They get after us because we aren't moving fast enough on the railroad.
We found that in the 50s, they started a process of intentional sabotage of the public.
They're running out of space for highways, and they've become so prohibitively high-priced.
By reducing the amount of service